If you love Stardew Valley and crafts, I have the perfect project for you to take on. The other day I was scrolling through on Pinterest and I saw this photo and I thought, wow, I really haven't experienced perla beads since I was a kid. When I was younger, I was totally obsessed with these pegboards. They came in squares and a circle and maybe even a little heart, and I must have made hundreds of these projects that I then had to beg my parents to iron for me because I was a kid and definitely shouldn't have been anywhere near the iron. When I was looking at the photo, I realised that it actually looked quite a lot like pixels, and it made me think of my favourite game of all time, Stardew Valley. I have played hundreds of hours of Stardew Valley. I have been in the mines, I have been fishing, I have been farming. I actually only got married after my second year in the game because I didn't really see the point of the interaction with the townsfolk when I had so much other important business to get on with in my mines. So you could say that I'm fairly obsessed with the game. And as I was thinking about the pixels in the game, I realised that maybe I could use that to my advantage. And the answer is an absolute resounding yes. There are so many fruits and veggies in the game that you could make out of these beads. If you wanted to go a little bit differently, you could also think about things like your pets in Stardew Valley, the different characters in Stardew Valley, heck, even the different meals that you can make for yourself in Stardew Valley. Because I'm not great at those other parts of the game, I felt like the fruits and veggies were the right part for me to take on. So then I went about trying to find a cross-stitch pattern. In my head, I was thinking that cross-stitch is quite a lot like beads in that there's lots of little squares that you're trying to fill in with a cross-stitch and lots of little squares that you're trying to fill in with beads. So it felt like a one-to-one translation in my head. I found this amazing cross-stitch pattern on Etsy, which I will absolutely link down below. And then I bought myself some beads. These are 26mm beads. When I bought these, I didn't realise quite how small they would be, but it actually really worked out to my favour because the smaller the items are, the more they look like pixels. So I highly recommend this set. I will also link that down below. I did end up buying 2 sets of beads because I found that I needed more colour range than I was able to achieve with just the first set. You don't necessarily need to be as particular as I was about it, but I did find it helpful to have more than one option. One thing that I wish was different in the sets was that they came in a more particular colour order, because it did mean that quite a lot of the time I had to have all 4 sets out in front of me, picking out the particular one that was going to be right for each individual fruit or veggie. So that was a little bit frustrating. Then it was a case of really just following the pattern. You know, there's a square here, you put the square there. When I did cross-stitch in the past, I have always done each colour individually. There are some people who I know work row by row. That seems like a whole lot of chaos, and so I decided to continue with the bi-colour theme for each individual fruit and veg. It's very therapeutic to do this work. You are simply following the instructions and your brain can focus on other things. I did this while listening to an audiobook. It was just a nice little way to spend time. One thing I liked about this particular pattern, and probably the case of lots of patterns, is that I could download it to the files onto my phone. This meant that I was able to reference my phone as I was making the individual fruits. This helped me because it meant that I wasn't printing out things, I wasn't having to go and find the papers, and I was really easy to zoom in and out as needed. I do have a few tips if you want to take on this project. Tip 1. Be free to use other colours. I love to embroider, and you can see that I actually once upon a time bought all of the DMC colours. You can see that there is a whole lot more range in embroidery thread than I had with my beads, and you kind of have to accept that. So be free to make slightly different colour choices, be a little bit adventurous, and find colours that feel right to you, even if they aren't exactly what the pattern says. Tip 2. Space things out on the pegboard. Leave yourself plenty of space when you are ironing so that you don't have things that are either melting together or melting unevenly. It's just a lot easier if you give yourself ample room. Tip 3. Make sure you have enough beads touching. For example, with these cherries, you really have to make sure that there are some overlapping in the stem, otherwise it's not going to iron properly where you want it to, and it's likely to fall apart. So don't make the same mistake that I did. Tip 4. don't burn your fruit and veg. It's very tempting to want to see these quickly, but you do kind of have to follow a protocol. You want to iron these at a medium heat. You don't want to burn them and end up with something that is unusable. For example, I had this little aubergine and I put it up to cotton because I was sick of waiting. And you can see up here that there's still holes where the pegs were in the project. So that was a bit disappointing. At the end of the day, I wasn't actually planning on using the aubergine in my project, but it was frustrating to experience this. You should also be very careful as to what you do once your project is ironed. From far away, this one looks totally fine. But if I go up close and show you in the light, you can see that there's like a lot of lines on top of it. I think what happened here was that I put other finished projects on top of it. And so it ended up looking a bit crap. You might be tempted to iron things twice. For example, this coconut, this is the side of the coconut that I ironed first. This is the side of the coconut I ironed second. Neither of that was necessary. You just need to do the first side. It's a waste of time and you run the risk of burning your project. So don't do that. Overall, you can see that I have far too many things to possibly fit into my project. And I was okay with that. I knew it was happening as I was making things, but it was just really fun. And so I need to think about what I'm going to use with some of these projects. For example, this one, I think that I could actually put like a little magnet on the back and make this into a little fridge magnet, which I think would be really cute. I knew which frame this was going in, and I knew exactly where it was going to go on my wall in my office. So once I realised I had too many things, a lot of the project was then distilling down the ones that I felt really strongly about. One of the things that I thought was really cool on this particular pattern is that they're laid out in almost a rainbow style, and I wanted to keep that overall ethos. Having said that, I knew I had too many things. There were some of them that I didn't feel very strongly about. There were things that I hadn't particularly grown all that much, or things that I couldn't really recognise. Like, for example, this pineapple. I just don't think it turned out very well, and so I wasn't going to use it in my project. I knew I only really had space for about a 4x5 grid, and so I spent a lot of time rearranging the individual fruits and veggies. Once I'd nailed it, I got a sheet of card and I put tiny X's on the spots for each individual fruit and veggie so that they would all line up and look really nice. So take your time, don't just willy-nilly it. Really make sure that you're getting things in an actual grid. Once I'd got things in a grid, I then just used my trusty glue gun and glued down the individual fruits and veggies. Originally, I hadn't expected this to fit behind the plexiglass, but I'm really glad it did because it helps flatten out a few of the edges. Like this cactus fruit definitely has a little bend in it, but it makes it look a lot more uniform. So yeah, that is the project. It is on pride of place on my wall. I love it so much. Anyone who comes over who is a Stardew Valley player will absolutely know what they are, but anyone who doesn't just thinks it's a cute little rainbow moment, and that is fine with me too. I can't wait to see what you make with your beads, and I hope you have half as much fun as I did. If you have any ideas of other things that I could do with these extra fruit and veggies, please let me know.